It's 1 p.m. European time, so let's get started. It's always a pleasure to be together. This is the 7th session in our Zoom session about Solidarities. We've been working together within ICOM with our Greek, Italian and Finnish colleagues and part of the Symusette committee. Our interpreters are up and running. As you know, the sessions are translated into the 3 ICOM official languages, French, English and Spanish. The interpreters are going. I hope you can hear us all okay. What you need to do if you want to hear interpreting is to click the little globe icon, the language interpretation button, and you choose your language, of course. These debates are recorded, as we say every time, and you will be filmed if your cameras are on. The sessions are then put on YouTube. Just important for you to know that if you don't want your face to be seen, turn your camera off. So those are some of the housekeeping issues before we start. Good afternoon once again. Thank you again for being with us. Today, our ambition is to build solidarities between museums around the world. And today is not just any day to be talking about this subject, because today is the International Museums Day. In France, it's a very fortunate chance that it's also the day before museums are going to be reopened after more than 200 days of closure. That's a lot of days. It's very impressive, but COVID has been a reality for all of us. I want to greet our Israeli friends who opened their museums well before there because they had a very rapid vaccination program. I can imagine they're struggling to feel excited about culture because we know that the situation of all the populations in the region is very difficult at the moment. This is a day of celebrating museums. The International Museums Day was created 44 years ago by ICOM, our own organisation. What better symbol of worldwide solidarity between museums than this 70-year-old NGO, which brings together 50,000 members in 140 different countries. Let us today enjoy and celebrate this union, this relationship, and let's try to make it a lasting reality. Here in France, on the eve of the reopening, we think that the audiences are looking forward to culture, that they've missed museums. We've asked the questions. And in order to start our session, just as a one-off today, we want to show you a short video clip that we made in-house. It's a very homemade affair here at ICOM France. We've asked visitors, children, artists and professionals why they are excited about museums reopening. They're people in our country, our territory, but it could be people from your country. Let's have a listen and a look at it. It's going to be good fun to listen to. So there you go. Thank you very much for listening. We don't have any French speakers. We wanted to share this excitement with you, all of the things that people were saying about how great museums are, as an introduction to our debate. Coming back to our subject, let's remember that this crisis has created new forms of solidarity between museums. Museums have connected together in a great way right from the start of the pandemic. We've been observing between national ICOM committees, international committees, between members and network and museums. We've seen information and good practice being shared and circulating. Very quickly, surveys from ICOM and UNESCO and NEMO showed us how widespread the closures have been and their consequences. We shared our experiences, our solutions and our protocols. Thanks to techniques such as Zoom, we have come together from the 4 corners of the world, and that has helped us to sense a sense of belonging to a professional community where, whatever our geographical location, we are working in the same profession. We've used digital technology to come together and form new forms of solidarity, and you're all going to give some examples of that in the debate. But before I hand over to you, I think we should remind one another that although we do have digital technologies and surveys, UNESCO studies show the inequality between different members. Only 5% of museums in Africa and small islands states have access to digital technologies, according to the UNESCO study. This digital divide has probably been aggravated by the progress that the rest of the world has been making. This should be, in my eyes, a focus for our desire to build solidarity between museums in the months and years that will follow this pandemic. For now, with our guests, we're going to present some successful experiences of solidarity, perhaps some that have been a bit less successful, and that will enable us to talk about the expectations of members with respect to ICOM. I want to greet and welcome our speakers, Stéphane Chagnon, who is Director General of the Société des musées du Québec, Syrago, Tsiara, who is Acting Director of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Greece, Michèle Rivet, I can't see her, she's the Vice President of ICOM Canada, I'm trusting she's here, Tuli Usikka, who is Chair of the Finnish Association for Museum Education, Pedali, and the Curator of Education at the Finnish Toy Museum. We also have Leo Zalmanson, who is responsible for the digital forum of ICOM Israel. So let's start with Stéphane Chagnon, if you're okay with this, for your initial talk. I believe that you're wanting to talk about the different actions put in place by the Société des musées du Québec during the crisis and how museums have worked with the government. Over to you, Stéphane Chagnon.
Thank you, Juliette. Can you hear me? So good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I wanted to thank ICOM France for inviting me to this participative debate on the construction of solidarities between museums. I was pleased to respond to this invite because consultation, networking, and mutual help is the very basis of my commitment for the past 30 years. We need solidarity between museums and between individuals, communities, people, and countries to overcome this crisis that's been hitting the world very badly, including museums. First of all, I'd like to give you a few facts about Quebec. This is a mostly French-speaking province located at the east of Canada with a population of 8.5 million people. It's huge territory. It's 4 times as large as Germany. The network includes 400 museum institutions and about 15 million annual entries in museum. So as Mrs. Raoul Duval said, I'm in charge of the Quebec Society of Museums, combining 300 museums and 600 professionals. So what lessons can we learn from the management of this crisis? If there's one thing that the pandemic has revealed, it's that structured networks with the capacity to consult each other and speak with one voice to the institutions stand a larger chance of being heard and consulted, especially during a time of crisis. On the 11th of March 2020, the Quebec government decreed the state of emergency. So the SMQ, the Quebec Museum Society, started working online and went into crisis management mode. We carried out a systematic watch for information from the government and from public health bodies in order to disseminate all the information that was relevant on a new COVID-19 page we created on our website. 4 weeks later, by mid-April 2020, the SMQ presented its health intervention plan for museums during COVID-19 to the government. This showed the museum's capacity to implement strict health and safety protocols to ensure the safety of the public and of its staff members. To help museums connect together, we organized virtual discussion forums to allow the managers of our museums to share their concerns and to discuss possible solutions. We acted as a first aid system, distributing over 500 protection caps for museum staff. We also designed a series of pictograms which were ready for printing to help museums comply with health and safety norms, standards, and to prepare for their reopening. This duty of assistance was manifested at every stage of the crisis, from its outset through to the relaunch of the museum's activities. On many occasions, we've explained the role and the relevance of our museums, which were presented as refuges that can help communities find a sense of normality after weeks or months under lockdown. In order to measure the human and financial impacts of the pandemic for museums, the Quebec Museum Society delivered 2 studies with its members, which showed a loss in the region of 34 million Canadian dollar for its member museums from April through to September 2020. During our many conversations we've had with representatives of the Department of Culture and Heritage in Quebec and Canada, we lobbied for emergency support to help the museums overcome the crisis. The Canada and Quebec governments responded to our call for help, and they respectively unlocked $53 million for museums in Canada and $400 million for cultural bodies in Quebec. We've all noticed that the ecosystem, the museum ecosystem, has been very badly hit. First of all, the museums have seen a drop in their income, and the situation is still going on today due to the absence of international tourists, due to the ban on group activities, and due to health restrictions that are limiting the capacity of our exhibition rooms. When faced with the closure of their museums, the staff have demonstrated resilience and creativity, as shown by the 120 digital proposals that we've listed on the webpage, which we dedicated to experiments and virtual exhibitions. After 14 months of pandemic, after 2 lockdowns, after 3 waves of coronavirus and an 8 months closure, our museum staff has navigated these disruptions with the support of the Quebec Museum Society. To support managers and professionals in museums as they had to tackle the transformation of their work, the transformation of their organization and their practices, over the past year, we've provided over 43 training activities that were delivered online for museum staff around Quebec on issues such as audience outreach, eco-responsibility, welcoming visitors with disabilities, and the maintaining of a respectful work environment in museums. How can we prepare ourselves for a new crisis if there is one? Well, I believe that museums will need to continue to demonstrate their relevance to political decision makers and to the community. We must position ourselves as an essential service, just like the food market or psychological support services. So, to conclude, I would like to thank the team of the Quebec Museum Society that adapted itself to these challenging circumstances and that were incredibly reactive and flexible over the past year. I'll finish with these words by Albert Jacquard. Now, the solidarity that we need the most is solidarity between all the inhabitants of the earth. Thank you. Thank you, Stéphane. This is a beautiful conclusion to this question. Solidarity between people who live on Earth. Perhaps it reminds us of this issue of building a sustainable world that keeps coming back during our conversations. We'll have more occasions to discuss this. I didn't say it in the introduction, but do feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions you might have. It's a great way of bringing additional information and ask questions to our speakers. I will now hand over to Tsiara from the MOMus in Greece. You're an art historian, and Syrago, I think you wanted to tell us about the first project of a network for contemporary culture museums in Greece. And I think you also are going to address questions of perspective. What has the global financial and humanitarian crisis taught us? So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Juliette. Thank you very much.
And I would like to thank Mrs. Tsiara too, from the ICOM base, who has invited me and to share with you in the context of this conference, together with my colleague, Areti Leopoulou, from the Museum of Contemporary Art of MOMus, our recent experience concerning tools and methods that aim to enhance solidarity, not only between cultural institutions, but most importantly, between the museum and community. I come from Thessaloniki. I come from the second city of Greece, from an institution which is called the Metropolitan Organization of Museums of Visual Arts, which institution made solidarity and collaboration the main survival and progress tool. Since 2 years ago, 5 museums and art centers in Greece, specifically the Museum of Modern Art, the Museum of Contemporary Art, the Museum of Photography, and the Experimental Center for the Arts in Thessaloniki, together with Alex Milonas Museum of Sculpture in Athens, all 5 of us, we were united and created a common platform called MOMus. Since then, we are working together, sharing capital and human labor, coordinating our activity, though each one of us maintaining their own separate profile, exhibition, and program. I would like to start in this meeting by stressing a basic principle. For people like us who work in the public institution of the cultural sector, the questions, which is the audience that we address or create, what kind of exhibitions and social programs we offer, what are the channels of production and communication that we use, how we finance our activity, and how we manage to be meaningful in critical times, these questions are always very serious issues of reconsideration. When we focus on the current social context, we have to take in account that the pandemic crisis hit us after 10 years long financial crisis that Greece went through and still tries to recover from. During this period and under the severe cuts imposed on the public cultural sector, we had to literally reinvent ourselves in order to find new tools that would ensure our sustainability, networking, and expand our collaborations in the axis of sharing our common capital, collections, infrastructures, experience, and labor. I would say that this period of the 10 years made us appreciate the benefits of collaboration and solidarity much more than we had done before. And now, during the last year of the pandemic, with the museums closed and people confined in their homes, facing the vital existential fear concerning the loss of their lives and the lives of their beloved ones, the question, what makes art meaningful for human life, acquired a new content. The same goes on for the instruments that we use in order to support our basic role, which is the promotion and mobility and the looking of artistic work. Obviously enough, digital space came up as the immediate answer for an alternative kind of public sphere, a substitute, I would say a poor substitute of body contact, but at the same time, a tool of release and sense of sharing. Through their own screens, inside the safe home of space, the recipients of our initiatives shared for many months images of artworks belonging to our collections, virtual tours and public discussions. A second step towards reciprocity and interactivity was the creation of a new forum called MOMus Resilience Project, a name that refers to our platform and the art object as res in the same time. This platform was open to artists and non-artists in order to receive and share images of people's daily life in the days of restricted mobility, with the artistic content, each one freely attributed to the image. So far, so close, MOMus, DOMUS, Docs Art Lab, Anthropos were some of the activities and digital exhibitions we initiated during the COVID period. During the same period, between May and November 2020, Greece had the chairmanship of the Council of Europe, one of the oldest and most prestigious European organizations with the aim to protect human rights, democracy, and the rule of law among European citizens. Greek chairmanship in the period of COVID pandemic consisted an unprecedented challenge, which the Greek Ministry of Culture and Sports, and specifically the General Directorate of Contemporary Culture, faced as an opportunity to address European audience through the joint forces of network of contemporary culture museums. This is a network that pre-existed and was activated during the COVID period. As a result, MOMus, with all its museum collections, together with the National Museum of Contemporary Art and the National Gallery Museum of Alexandros Soutsos in Athens, we all worked together in order to create an original digital exhibition that would address and communicate the values of European Council through the course of dialogue that went through the 20th and 21st century by connecting and juxtaposing different visual codes around common human experiences. The exhibition was entitled Visualizing Humanity and was inspired by the unprecedented challenges humanity had to face related to growing economic inequalities, uncontrollable culture of fear, arbitrary restrictions of individual human freedom, and job insecurity. These challenges highlight the human rights debate as more relevant than ever, 70 years after the signing of the European Declaration of Human Rights. And now, Mrs. Areti Leopoulou, fellow curator and art historian at MOMus, with which we worked together for the exhibition I told you before, will continue from now on, familiarizing you with the content of the exhibition. As for me, thank you very much for sharing these ideas and thoughts and be part of this platform. Areti, now we'll continue.
Bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. We're very happy to share this project, an exhibition challenge that was produced under completely unprecedented conditions and elements. And I'm really happy to tell you how we've experienced all this along with our colleagues from the National Gallery Museum of Alexandros Soutsos and the National Museum of Contemporary Art. This exhibition was set up by MOMus on the MOMus platform during and within a city lockdown in Thessaloniki, half of a lockdown in Athens. So at least on our part, it was actually completed from our homes. Of course, all colleagues from both museums were responding tirelessly, and after several Zoom meetings, telephones, and emails, a 3-chapter exhibition was created and was digitally installed. Each institution decided to undertake a chapter, which would be shaped by artworks from the permanent collections of all 3 involved institutions. And each museum team, curatorial team, proposed artworks from its collections, and their individual configuration was done accordingly. Now, we can surf together. I have shared the link of the exhibition on our chat box, and you can start surfing on the platform while I'm talking about it. The exhibition Visualizing Humanity had 3 chapters. The chapter entitled Animus Immortalis Est was curated by the National Gallery curatorial team, and it's raising the critical issue of humans' life value and dignity at a time when fundamentalism, fascism, religious extremism, and terrorism threaten the humanitarian values on which post-World War II Europe was built. The second chapter, entitled Feels Like Home, curated by the National Museum of Contemporary Art curatorial team, deals with the concept of home, both literally and figuratively. Globalization has turned millions of people from citizens to immigrants. The right to housing, social security, and self-determination is more urgent than ever as issues. So what does home mean to each of us? Finally, the chapter Climate Crisis presents artworks that aim to demonstrate the major issue of climate change. Now, there are a few points and remarks that need to be mentioned in the context of this project and this particular kind of collaboration between museums. It was all done almost entirely from a distance. We never saw our colleagues live, as I have already mentioned. It was done with digital transfer and exchange of artworks, not with a regular, traditional and actual art handling. A fact that would have technically and legally, of course, be completely different and have a completely different management. And of course, financially, a completely different budget in the case of, for example, a live exhibition. Some of the artworks presented in this exhibition can be presented simultaneously and in parallel in visitable live exhibitions of the institutions. For example, the National Gallery just opened its doors and its new building. And many of the artworks that are presented in the platform are now hanging on the walls already of the Institute. Even if we know that the public understands that the experience of the work of art is not complete through the platform and possibly not even sufficient, the artworks are at least visible, were at least visible during the lockdown and communicable, even for those who cannot visit the museum at all. For example, for those in other countries like you right now. In this context, of course, the work of art has now acquired a slightly different role. It is information and has both an educational role and a content. Therefore, this exhibition may not necessarily have a time limit and a framework. It can be there on the platform, floating on the internet space forever, and is available to anyone, anywhere. There can be made at any time any kind of corrections to the information material of the exhibition, even changes. It does not have a strictly established form and structure, but any error or bug is detected dynamically, and as is the case of any website. So through all this, we learned and informed each other, all colleagues involved, about how we work in our institutions. Also, we learned a lot about the differences of digital management to the differences and similarities of perception of the work of art between institutions, which are inevitably differentiated. For example, in National Gallery, there aren't any new medium artworks with content related to the contemporary concept of ecology, as the works of the National Gallery in the permanent collection are mostly historical and emblematic artworks of 19th century until the mid-late 20th. And the curatorial perspective is also reasonably and inevitably different at this kind of work, because it is different to work with mainly painting and sculpture, with historical palimpsests that are included, for example, in our national school books. And it is totally different at the same time to work with an upcoming young artist from the field of performance on a video that took place and was recorded 5 years ago, or a three-dimensional art installation that needs to be well presented online because it might never be correctly presented online. So with the National Museum of Contemporary Art, things were obviously quite more relevant, of course, due to the common field of work, production, but also to the similar technical and technological need that our artworks demand. What is noteworthy, however, is how fruitful this collaboration was between us all, based on a mutual respect and most of all on our greater need to communicate the works of art and their multiple narratives while being somehow working from our homes, with hard drives transporting actually our history through algorithms and programming codes. We had to work with the shoes of every different co-curator and respect the different identity of each institution in order to host such an exhibition on this platform. And it is true that we lost the joy of opening crates with artworks, signing condition reports or loan agreements. We spoke, finally, we spoke many different kinds of languages to make this all happen. Therefore, though it seems to be very technical, we've learned much more than we expected, and we absolutely all are by now more experienced on how to collaborate. And art itself, on the other hand, stubbornly found the field to exist, to be visible, and tell the universal truths that it manages to formulate over time. So we survived. We were present digitally through new barriers and technologies by modernizing our ways and means. Finally, we're now together, we're all healthy, and we are thankfully resilient. So thank you very much.
Merci. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Areti, for this very interesting testimony. Digitalizing humanity is a very big ambition. We haven't dared to go so far, but I'm sure that we could have some very interesting discussions with you about this very important question about digitalization. You might be able to tell us a bit more during the debate session. I'm going to hand over now to Michèle Rivet, who is Vice President of ICOM Canada. She's a museologist, and I think Michèle wanted to tell us about ICOM Canada's approach. Canada, as you know, is a very large country, and she's going to tell us about what she's done in the pandemic.
Thank you very much. It is a great pleasure to be gathering with this group today. I would like to apologize for being late. Of course, you always get these technical issues at the worst time. So I'm happy to with you, and I hope I'll be able to stay until the end because I've got a very important meeting coming up. So first of all, happy birthday to all of you. This is International Museum Day, and it's a very important day, and it's something that's bringing us all together. So I'll be short. First of all, I would like to send the apologies of our president, Marie Lalonde, who unfortunately won't be able to be with us because she's having to take part in a number of celebrations in connection with Museum Day. ICOM Canada. So what have we been doing? Well, we found ourselves in the middle of this pandemic like everybody else. And what we've tried to do has been to continue to connect our members and to act as a connection for people to come together and talk together. So we've organized a number of activities for this purpose. We actually took this opportunity because Canada is very mindful of the evolution of questions, the evolution of the definition of what a museum is. We took this opportunity to hold a webinar with Mr. Garlandini and with Bruno Boulan, who's the president and who's very ICOFOM. He's very engaged with this question of the definition of a museum. He's the vice president of the MDPP committee. So this was very successful. We had lots of comments, and we created this dialogue, this conversation between the members of the museum and ourselves. And this hadn't been the case so far. So perhaps this is a positive, one of the positive effects of this pandemic. We've also consulted with our members on our strategic plan, which we'd been drafting. And what we've realized has been that the fact starting this virtual debate with our members has allowed us to develop a form of solidarity between members who've been much more responsive to the different questions we asked them and to the polls that we conducted, the surveys. It's important to note also that during a pandemic, of course, the visual becomes much more important, as we saw. And that's perhaps what brought us to hold this symposium on decolonization. This was supposed to take place in person, but of course it was a virtual symposium. And in the end, we had to block admissions because our platforms were too full. We had to stop at 1,000 participants. This was unprecedented for ICOFOM, and we'd never seen such a large attendance on a symposium. This was supposed to take place in Montreal, and this was a chance for us to have speakers from all around the world. So we I think our friend Michèle Rivet is having a problem with her connection. Are you still with us, Michèle? So we'll give her a couple of minutes, and otherwise I'll hand over to our next speaker, and then we'll come back to Michèle perhaps a bit later on. Michèle, if you can hear us, perhaps send us a message. So thank you, Michèle. It was really interesting to hear about this this large format experience. If you don't mind, I'll hand over to Tuli Uzikuka. I hope I'm getting your name right. She's the president of the Finnish Association for Education, for Museum Education, and she's a curator at the Finnish Toy Museum. It's very interesting to hear about your experience, because I think you've redesigned the museum during the pandemic. So I'll hand over to you, and then we'll go back to Michèle if we can get hold of her before the end of this session. Over to you, Tuli.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, ICOM, for invite me here. And yeah, I was thinking about telling you about what PEDALI, so Museum Education Association, have done in Finland. And I will share. Okay. I was thinking of sharing, but there's not. Yeah. So we have 300 educator, audio workers or educator workers, curators in our members, and we had provided a platform for cooperation and exchange for good practices and support for museums educators. And first, when pandemic hit Finland in March 2020, of course, it was a shock, and we had to cancel everything that we had planned for that year. But pretty soon, at May, we had our first Zoom meeting. Before that, we hadn't had any like virtual meetings. So it was the first one, and after that, we have 14 Zoom meetings with our members. And we saw the situation to be good way to reach also foreign and international partners. So at that summer, we had we invite different kind of international interesting speakers to our meetings. And our meetings have include different kind of we had exhibition excursions, lectures, workshops, and for most important, discussion forum for our members. And the themes of our events have influenced by our members' wishes or very current topics. So we had meetings about digital pedagogy and decolonization and Black Lives Matter and climate exchange, service design, accessibility. And our first meeting was what is after pandemic hit us was in May, and then we invite this British art historian and anthropologist Alice Proctor, who has like encouraged museums and to rethink the politics of display of their galleries. And in June 2020, we invite artist and a performer and author and MOMus educator from New York, Pablo Helguera, and he told us how in MoMA was the situation during pandemic, but also he told us what is the situation in New York during the Black Lives Matter situation. And then September, we usually have our like yearly trip, for another European city for our members, but we couldn't travel anywhere, so we had this virtual trip to New Zealand, and we visit the Papa Tonga Rewa Museum in New Zealand. And we continue this Black Lives Matter at October, and then we had webinar in Finnish Ethnographic Museum, Helena Rautavaara. And then we also in a later in this early this year had also the same like the colonization team meeting with Amos Rex, which is a museum in Helsinki, which had Egyptian exhibition. And also the climate change has been very like a very actual topic that in Finland that has spoken, including the pandemic. And so we also had this kind of workshop or lecture for our members that we told how to execute climate actions on museums, and we could change our what the different museums in Finland has done in that climate change. And I think the most important of our meetings have been the discussion that we have with our members, that normally everybody work at their homes, and also in Finland museums have been mostly shut down. At spring 2020 we were closed 3 months, and then opened during summer and fall, but end of the fall also they were closing. So our meetings have been those few moments that people have see their colleagues. So I would say that in Finland this pandemic has been some positive acts. I think the digital jump has been it was like forced to happen, and many museums have taken very big steps through that, and had very successful what they have done for big steps, and been very active and take over different digital platforms, and many people have been able to enjoy museums from far away. And I think in Pedali, when we have our members all over the Finland, and I think this year during this pandemic year, we have receipts many our more our members that years before pandemic. So also good things has pandemic bring. Yeah, thank you.
Merci Tuli. Oui, cette conclusion sur les côtés positifs de la
Thank you,
pandémie.
Tuli. Yes, it's so there's also positive sides to this pandemic. Some of you earlier mentioned the major inequalities that became apparent. So we're going to look, we're going to have to address a number of dilemmas in the year to come. How can we create new solidarities to reduce these new inequalities that have emerged? This is one of the major questions we're going to have to tackle. I can see that Michèle is back with us. Would you like to go on now? Yes. Yes, I would like to apologize. I'm really sorry about this. So I just wanted to add, I think that this pandemic has, in this big country of ours, has enabled us to bring people together much more using these virtual tools. And it allowed us to reach out to people who perhaps wouldn't have connected with the museum because they're too far away. I wanted to finish by talking about the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, which is a new museum that opened in 2014 in Winnipeg. It's a human rights museum, or persons' rights, people's rights, as we say over here. And so using different virtual technologies, virtual tours of the museum, exhibition tours, interactive participation with visitors, we really managed to reach out to an audience. Winnipeg is a small city in the very center of Canada, so it's quite far away from the large centers. And in the end, this museum has been able to reach many more people and many more visitors, and has had much more interaction with its audience than it would have had if we had been relying on live visitors. Of course, I'm not going to say that the pandemic is a positive thing happening to us, but this Canadian museum went out there to reach out for people, and people were able to log in to get to us. So this is what I wanted to say. So apologies again for being messy about it, but I was dealing with a few constraints. Thank you, Michèle. No worries at all. We all know that, well, we're saying that technology is allowing us to do great things, and it's allowing us to connect together. And of course, we're becoming more experienced, and we're talking to colleagues in Ecuador and Buenos Aires and everywhere around the world. And of course, this is something we could never have imagined. In the past, when we didn't have these systems. Then the question is, has this brought about more solidarity between museums and museum professionals? I think it's creating a different relation with our audiences and between ourselves. But then we will need to evaluate if this has been the case. So I will now hand over to our next speaker, and then we'll have a debate. I can see a few people are writing their comments in the chat box. So our Belgian friends are saying that they didn't shut down their museum during the whole period. I would love to hear what they've got to say later on. But before that, I would like to hand over to Lior Zelmanson. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's very important. You are in charge of the digital forum at ICOM Israel. So we're at the very heart of the topic. When we created this session, I wasn't really aware that when talking about new solidarities between museums, I wasn't so sure that we would spend so much time talking about digital technologies, but of course this is a key question. Perhaps you can tell us about the website you've managed to develop, and about the paradigm shift in the design of online activities. Your testimony is very important, so over to you.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. It's so great to be here. Very troubling week, but it's very inspiring to see these kinds of forum thinking together about solidarity worldwide. If I can, I prepared a slideshow for you. Can I get permission to share my screen? So it's currently disabled. Okay, well, while you help me, I'll start.
Il faut donner le partage.
Leo, they're just asking for that permission to be given.
Okay, now I see it. Okay, so here you go. I hope you can all see it. Okay, So I will talk to you in the next few minutes about the way museums, specifically in Israel, but I'm sure not just in Israel, from what I've researched, have changed their thinking about the role of a website. And as you all know, and this was our point of departure, physical museums, most of the world were closed in the last year. And the problem is that when the museum is now only a website to most people, since the physical environment is shut down, we discovered that most museums are problematic experiences. In fact, most museums just offer information as part of the website. They don't offer an experience. This is just an example from one of our Israel museums, where the website is mostly intended to give you information pre-visit to the physical museum. But it doesn't have to be like that. And that's what I'm going to stress and to focus on in the next few minutes. But before I do, here are some more challenges that we encountered moving to the digital. There is a feel currently in the cultural heritage world of losing ownership also to big tech. Google, specifically Google Arts and Culture, Facebook, are controlling in many ways the information we received, also information to museums, information to culture. They are doing incredible projects on one hand, trying to engage people with history and with arts, but on the other hand, they take a lot of the ownership or the design idea and concepts, and they make it their own. They make it Silicon Valley. And this is something I think we should discuss now that we consider being more in the digital world. Because why? Because when we are incorporating these platforms and giving them control over our websites and the way our museums look online, they curate it for us. And when the Facebook curates or Twitter curates or Instagram, they also decide what will get promoted, what will get moderated. So these are just a few examples of why websites and museums are important and why it's important for museums to spend thinking and spend resources to make them independent and also exploratory and experiential. Most of us, when we do something with the website, if it's not just information, we tend to focus on the building. So we shut down the buildings, but in many museum websites, like the example you see here, the focus is, as you can see, is on the wall, is on the scan of the real museum, which I think is not imaginative enough. The internet, the digital world gives us so many opportunities as museum professionals to explore ideas. And I will focus on the specific idea of solidarity. I don't think a museum website, again, should be about information. It shouldn't be about the building. It should be about how do we use the internet to make a museum more global, more inclusive, so everybody will feel welcomed. It's about how to create communities and new sorts of intimacy through the use of digital tools. It's about flexibility. Exhibitions take years to develop, but virtual exhibitions could be shorter, could take less time because of the lack of physical artifacts. That is actually could be an enabler, could be a catalyst for museum transformation and dynamics. And also, and which I think is very important in the COVID time, it connects the private and the public. It creates the home and the institute. And I'll give you a few quick examples. So first of all, we established a community. We call it Culture in the Days of COVID. It has almost 10,000 cultural professionals from all around Israel to share knowledge, to share experience, to create communities together. One of the things we've done there are a lot, as you know, we are all in Zoom. So we of course started with Zoom sessions. We created conferences called Culture from a Safe Distance that were about ideas for the present day, given the shutdown to museums. What should we do? How can we think differently about museums? And one of the proposals was to build a festival. So in April 2020, there was a festival from the group. We called it Viral Festival, and it took artists and producers from different cultural institutes and asked them to create new works that are born digital, that are created for the internet, that are not replicas of the physical space, that are not, let's say, a copy of what could have happened in the regular world. These are new works, mostly arts, architecture, theatrical works, performative works for the screen. So just to give you a quick example, this is one work which was actually using Zoom in a new way. So you could see here, it's basically a Zoom channel, but it creates new sorts of intimacies and touch between people by just bringing screens together. So it's all these sort of like funny games, but it's really a work about intimacy in the age of isolation. And in terms of ICOM Israel, we opened up all of our forums. We have forums for digital design, accessibility, for the veterans, education departments, and collections. We opened them via Zoom. We opened them via Facebook. And this increased the amount of conversations, how many people we get into each conversation. It's made the forums much more open, much more inclusive. So people from all around Israel, even people with less accessibility in terms of geography or in terms of budgets, could attend these sessions and learn and share their practices. I also saw that a few examples of the always on culture that the internet allows. The internet does not shut down at night, right? It doesn't have opening hours like museums. So there were a lot of online streaming where you broadcast like a TV channel going on and on what's happening currently. And this is a funny project called Art BNB, where a group of artists actually slapped and broadcast their life in the Tel Aviv Museum of the Arts. So here you can see them sleeping next to Jeff Koons' sculpture. And it was, of course, a criticism on the state of culture given the shutdown. We also seen some virtual museums. This is Tmuna Museum happening in virtual space, virtual reality, created new ideas about space, spaces that shift and change and are becoming dynamic and can host multiple exhibitions. So this is also an example that we see in Israel this year. And I think just to finish up, that we should, as ICOM, think about how to make museum websites more like an experience to increase solidarity. How do we do this? We think about emotion in design, not just functionality. We focus on stories, on storytelling, and on surprises. We provide websites that are changing, are dynamic, and are personalized, and we give a place in the website to the community. We let them co-create with our collection, with our artifacts. We ask the community through the website, what do they need, what do they want, and incorporate it in the website. Of course, there's tons of challenges. This is not simple in any way. It requires us to address literacy, digital divide issues. Not everybody has access to digital or digital knowledge. It requires different sorts of funding from government or also from philanthropists. It has copyright issues for some of the works and some of the projects that we need to address. And of course, it creates a need to change also how we think about the viewer or the visitor, because the people who use these sort of devices, they don't have the attention span, and we don't have the control as we have in the physical museum. So we need to shift our view, see the opportunities, but also face the challenges. And if we face them together, I think we can create much more knowledge. So I open up the stage to also send me your thoughts. And I remind also, if you don't know, the European Union is now conducting Horizon specifically about participatory management in museums. If you're involved in that, your university or your museum, I would love also if you can get in touch, because we really want to form a collaboration in Europe between the different museums on this specific topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lior, for this presentation of your website and your ideas. You've shown us lots of things, very creative ideas, and you've invited us to think differently about museums. It's not just about boosting them and moving them forward through digital technologies, but it's about thinking very differently. Our Belgian colleague mentioned a few things on the chat. I don't know if you're ready to say something now. You were saying quite a few times in the chat box that the future of museums is going to be a hybrid future. That might seem obvious, but we still need to think about the concrete examples that this hybrid approach might take. Some ideas might be about reorganizing the present and the remote aspects together, but the challenges of the museums of the future are around some of these issues around being inclusive, enabling audiences to come to the museum, some audiences that might have been met in the digital space. And so if different people have experiences of this, people who are here in the room on Zoom with us, if you've got any experiences, you might want to share some experience of things that you've done together, projects, the collaborative projects between museums. I'm going to hand over to you. Is anyone going to seize hold of my invitation to share their experiences? I'm thinking back to a previous session that a number of you attended on the 15th of December last year. It was about solidarity. That's our generic theme for this conference cycle. We had some very interesting examples about solidarity in terms of ways of working, remote working, new ways of working together, and the consequences that could have, the consequence of distance from one's colleagues. I don't know if any of you would like to speak into this and talk about these different aspects of hybrid working. Johan, perhaps I could hand over to you. I don't know if you're still with us.
Thank you. Yes, can you hear me? Merci. Bon International Museum Day at everybody. I used to be a worker in a museum, Beaux-Arts in Brussels. It's a cultural house with a different and a large scope on art. And today I work at Ticketmaster, and it is a digital ticket provider platform. My experience during this pandemic is that we were very, very lucky in Belgium because the government decided that museums are the only way that people can be in touch with art. And it worked really well. I've seen in Brussels museums like being sold out because they have a new system of reservation with time slots. And that system allows also to have more information about the people who visit your institution. I really loved the presentation of Mr. Zalmans about the always on and the collection being yeah, more like a platform, not only presentation and not only offline information. That's the way you can connect with your audience. And in the future, I think, yeah, that's the key of any collection. How can we keep it alive? How can we add value to it? And how can we have input by the audience to make it more accessible? Interesting times, but it's not really an answer to you how solidarity between workers in the museum can be augmented. The thing is, via those kind of Zoom meetings, we can also maybe invite people of other businesses to have their experience and to see how on the work floor, not only via a Zoom platform, but with yeah, new ideas. What about augmented reality? What about people who don't have the access to the internet? How can we reach them? I think there's a lot of interesting questions in the future. Every crisis is not a waste, but to use and to have yeah, new insights.
Oui, merci. Est-ce que d'autres ont envie d'intervenir sur ce même sujet ou sur
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the same topic?
sujet? Je regarde si des mains se lèvent. Moi, j'aurais volontiers aussi apporter ce témoignage que chez nous, en tout cas, des fédérations
I wanted to hear from federations. Some of these federations are not always used to collaborating, and because of the pandemic, we started working together. I think over here we've got the Federation of Eco Museums and Society Museums. I'm not sure if Céline Chamas is still here in the meeting. We've also responded to an invitation from the Ministry of Culture and the French Service for Museums. We've had the opportunity to talk with and cooperate with other museums and other sectors. There are different associations of museums, and we've become much better at collaborating, and we got I got a great sense of the diversity of this landscape in our country. And this really highlighted the need to cooperate. And another thing was that cooperation projects were set up with other cultural sector players. I'm not sure if Xavier Rodagno is here in the meeting, but we worked together to lobby for the reopening of museums. Céline, Xavier, would one of you like to testify on these collaborations that perhaps took on a new dimension with the crisis? Would you like to share your experiences? I think they're not with us anymore. I can't see who's here. No, okay, so we've almost come to the end of this session. I've got a few things I would like to share on our next meeting. Nava, our colleague from ICOM Israel, will give us a conclusion for the session. So can I hand over to Nava for 5 minutes, perhaps, for a conclusion?
Yes, sure. Am I well connected? Thank you. Thank you, Juliette, and thank you to all the speakers. Thank you all. We learned a lot, and a lot has been done with a lot of creativity inside countries and with digital work, connecting members, connecting audiences, and the whole public. It was very inspiring to hear all of you. And I think there were, to this pandemic, we saw some beautiful sides that made us all very creative. But some of the sides, some things we need to learn from this pandemic. And I think the theme of this meeting is very, very important. It's very important for strengthening the museums and for their resilience. Museums work for society and within communities. And while if museums are strong, then we make society stronger and our community stronger. So this has a very social value for humanity. Strengthening museums means, in a way, strengthening humanity all around the world. And things are moving very, very fast now. But in this point, I think it's very important to learn and to draw conclusions from COVID-19. We saw the very creative side that most of you showed us, and it is really impressing, very, very impressing. And this period, it reflects the strengths, but also the weaknesses of the relationships between museums. And we're talking about solidarity. Solidarity first means connections. And if we check our connections during this COVID-19 period, we can learn some things. Inside the countries, we were very, very well connected, as many people, all the speakers today demonstrated, very well connected to the members, to the public, and did a very creative and very good work. But our countries, the museum leaders in countries were not well connected, and this was not good for us. And we did not have enough knowledge because we were not connected. We could not share this knowledge that what happened in every country. We had to ask and all the time make researchers in order to get knowledge and information. Especially in crisis, knowledge sharing is very, very important, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I hope we will have very good surprises and very good things would happen for us, but we don't know if there will be another crisis or something else that we will have to head. So I think it's very important now to look at the weaknesses we had in connection between countries and also between museum leaders in countries. It's very important for us to have channels of sharing this knowledge in an efficient way and in a quick way to get this knowledge between museum leaders in the world. Stéphane talked a bit about that, and Juliette and Syrago talked about this, about dealing with the country. I want to explain a little better about the problem that revealed during this period. Museum leaders we were not connected, but we had to give information to our countries. We dealt with the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Health. we needed information to give them of what's going on in other countries, what solutions other countries found in order to help us find a solution in our countries. And I must mention also that the people in the government, they're not familiar very well of what's going in museums around the world. So we found ourselves looking and researching all the time and trying to get information, but the information was not fluent, it was not enough. And I think that we must learn from this. I think that ICOM is the body that can provide this information easily to connect us museum leaders, the chairs of the countries, and to get all the information and to share it with all of us. This could give us very good way to deal with what's going on all the time, because things changed from day to day, from month to month, and we really needed to know how the rest of the world, the museums world, is dealing with the pandemic. This could help us a lot, and I think this is something that we should learn from. I think that this is the power and also the role of a global organization. I would really recommend that ICOM would set up a committee or something, some other body, some other kind of body to examine this and to look into this and see what we can do and how we can improve the way we share knowledge between us, and how with this knowledge sharing we can strengthen museums. And of course, again, this is mostly, we never had for many years, thank God, a big crisis. But now that we had this crisis, we have to learn from it, and we have to learn that knowledge sharing is a tremendous force. It can greatly help museums, and we must, all countries and all museum leaders in countries must cooperate and must have the channels to cooperate all the time. This could strengthen them a lot. And this unity, this is what I call unity. This is solidarity. It's the connection between everybody, and that creates the solidarity and creates unity. And it's a very big power, that a very big force that we should not miss again. We should use this force to strengthen our museums in our countries. And when we strengthen the museums in our countries, we strengthen our communities, we strengthen our society, and we give a lot to humanity in the world. So I do hope we can improve this communication. And I want to thank everybody. Thank you, Juliette, and thank you to all the speakers. It was very interesting. Thank you to all the participants too.
Merci Nava. Merci chère Nava d'avoir posé en conclusion les questions.
Thank you, dear Nava. Thank you for asking the really important questions during this conclusion. You talked about all the things that we've done. A lot of us have been amazed at our creative capacity, our inventiveness, and our resilience. I know how much you've thought about what you shared with us just now, that the inadequacies in our cooperation, and we do need to learn the lessons from this period that we've walked through in order to come out of this period stronger. I hope we won't have more crises, but in any case, I do hope that our cooperation will be stronger, better structured, and more resilient. I hear the message that you're sending all of us as ICOM members, and we want to pass that on through our organization. This is our organization, and it's very important to us to ensure that this incredible strength that we have within this more than 70-year-old organization with tens of thousands of members all around the world will continue to organize this system for sharing information. That's the main role of ICOM in a way. And as Nava, you were saying, I think we need to continue to focus on knowledge. We need to build on the fact that we are all working as part of the same profession. In some senses, the strength and the sustainability of ICOM is based on the fact that we are an association of professionals who are striving together to share professional excellence and continuing to face up to the challenges that you raised. We want to show solidarity with those members who have the least access to the wealth of digital technology that is out there. We need to continue to open up the access to museums to as wide as possible an audience. I think these are some areas which ICOM needs to continue to work on all together. So I very strongly support the proposal that you've made, Nava, as part of your conclusion. This has been the 7th conference in our cycle. It's a cycle of 10 sessions. So we may continue after that. They might go even further. But I do want to take this opportunity now to tell you about the next session, which is going to be held on the 15th of June. It will be a Tuesday from 1 p.m. to 2:30 French time. We're going to be thinking in very concrete terms about the way in which museums collect artifacts and objects that speak about the pandemic that we've been walking through. How do you see a future COVID museum, if we can talk in those terms? We know that many museums are starting to collect things that will speak about this period, and we're going to draw together museums in order to think about and share about how we can together conserve the marks and the traces of this COVID period. Some of these things will be intangible. There will be some digital things which are not very easy to keep hold of or characterize, but this will be the effort that is required of us over the next few years. Just one or two more pieces of information. As part of the collaboration, we had a number of Canadian friends with us today. I do want to talk a little bit more about the France-Canada agreement, which is open until the 31st of August. So do send in any applications in this context if you want. France is moderating this session, so I want to take this opportunity to say that on the 24th of September, we're going to have our ICOM France AGM, Annual General Meeting, which will continue on from the subject we've been talking about today. It will be museums forming teamwork. We'll be at the National Museum of Sport, and we're going to be talking about the solidarity and teamwork between us. And we're going to obviously invite a number of international colleagues to come and speak to us on this subject. This is the last thing I had to say. We've slightly run over time. But just to go back to what Nava said, one of the key aspects in my view out of what we've walked through over the last year is to say just to see how much from one country to another we've been able to develop much closer relationships between countries. Digital technology has been a part of it, but digital technology cannot do it all. I think that the crisis and the pandemic has highlighted to us the need we have of one another. We have needed to come together. We needed to avoid thinking about museums and the museums of the future in isolation. We needed to start thinking about it all together. Thinking together in some ways is easier on Zoom, but the really significant thing, in my view, in any case, is the fact that we've started to call one another up, to have discussions together whenever there was an issue that arose that required it. So I do want to thank once again everyone who has been on the call today, everyone who's been here regularly, and I want to say I very much look forward to seeing you again in a bit less than a month. As you know, the recordings are made of these meetings. They'll be available on the ICOM France YouTube channel. Thank you to our interpreters who have facilitated our discussions, and thank you to all of you for taking part in the discussions. See you soon and have a very good International Museum Day. Goodbye.